Welcome back, everyone. And today is a cool day because I am going to share my thoughts on a brand new speaker. It just came out from Triangle, and it's in the budget category, but I refer to it as a budget high performance speaker. It has audiophile traits. They're beautiful to look at, and they come in at $550. I even built an entire system around them. And the total cost with speakers, streamer, DAC, amp, stands, and cables comes out to about $1,000 US. Today I'm talking about the new Triangle Borea BR4 speakers, and they are something else. So a few weeks ago, I got a shipment from Triangle in, and I was asked if I wanted to review their brand new speakers that were coming out in a few weeks, called the Borea 4s. Now, I was not really too familiar with the previous version, the 3s, right? But they were very popular. They were a big seller for Triangle in the budget category. And this was their improvement on those. And so I was like, yeah, I always love a good budget speaker as long as it's a good value for the money. I don't want to get a speaker in here and have it sound not that great and talk about it. I only talk about things on this channel that I would own myself. And while I own some pretty fancy exotic hi-fi, I am not a hi-fi snob. I acknowledge you can get amazing sound, even 80% or more of the big money sound in a much less expensive package. And this is one of those times. When I opened up these speakers, the first thing that struck me was they're pretty beautiful for a $550 speaker. Last year, I reviewed the very popular ELAC B3s, and they're your standard small black box, but they really sounded great for that $450. They had great bass, a warm mid-range, a nice top end that wasn't super sharp, and they just had a musical flow about them. I couldn't believe they were $450. But if you look at them, they look like about a $500 pair of speakers. When I took out the Boreas that are $550, they looked more like a $1,000 pair of speakers to me right out of the get-go. These are the oak greens that I have here. The front face is oak green. They do have magnetic grills. I much prefer them with the grills off. And you can see the beautiful wood veneer on the sides, top, and back. Now, these come in various colors. They have a white, a blue. You can go to the Triangle website and see the different colors they offer. I'll put a link in the description below. I also have a full written review that I did that has a lot more detail in it, like more of the specs and details and things like that that's in the written review. I'll put a link to that below as well. So I opened them up, and at the time I had my full HD Nagra setup in, and I was listening to the Audio Icon 12s, which are stunning works of art in the high-end realm of speakers. I'm going to review those in the next couple of weeks. I've removed those Icon 12s, which gave me a thunderous, beautiful, refined, thunderous, but gentle sound. They're an incredible speaker. They have a horn up front, big bass driver in the bottom, but they don't sound like a horn. I took those out. We'll talk about those later. I put in my speaker stands, and I put in the Borea 4s, BR4s, and I hooked up my Valhalla speaker cables with my Nagra gear. Now, nobody on earth is going to buy these $550 speakers and hook them up to a Nagra setup with Nordost cables, but I had to hear what they would sound like with this exotic gear. I sat in my chair, I fired up some playlists, and I was blown away. I was like, what? I could have this expensive system in these $550 speakers and actually be happy with them. They sounded wide open, crystalline, 3D, not as 3D as some of these higher performance speakers, but I couldn't believe what I was hearing in a $550 speaker. The mid-range, the purity of the mid-range was just stunning. The top end was sweet and extended, but it wasn't harsh. It wasn't aggravating my nerves in my brain, right? The bass seemed a little light, but it was very tuneful and it was very controlled. And the port comes out of the front, so you're not going to get any bass boom if you put these close to the wall. I love the fact that they're 90 dB efficient and 8 ohms as well. It means you could drive them with as little as 20-25 watts. So as I enjoyed these speakers with that exotic setup, I was like, no one on earth would pair these with this. So let me pair these with something that people will listen to them with. So I took all the Nagra gear out, I cleaned out the space, and I put in a Soul Wimamp Pro, which is the Pro version of the Wimamp I reviewed a year ago or so. Now they updated the DAC, I believe, and I believe it's 60 watts per channel, the Wimamp Pro. I hooked it up to the Borea 4s, and the Wimamp Pro is a streamer, a DAC, and an amplifier all in one. It has a subwoofer output, and it also has an analog input. But I hooked up my Ethernet to it to stream, and away we went. I sat down. I also changed out the Valhalla cables, by the way, to my favorite copper cables that cost $39 for a 12-foot pair. Those are linked in the description below as well. So I had everything set up, and all in all, this whole system with the Borea BR4s came in at about $1,000, maybe $1,069, right? And I sat in the chair, I was listening, and I said, okay, it sounds different than it did with the Nagra, not as refined, not as spatial, not as wide open, but holy cow, guys. With that $379 Wimamp Pro and these $550 speakers, I was hearing a beautiful sound. Now, it wasn't as clean and clear as the Nagra, but who cares? The Wimamp is $379 and it's giving me 80% of that big money sound. There was a little more warmth in the mids, so the vocals were a little more fleshed out and they came out more 3D into the room because of this. The treble was a little more hotter with the Wimamp Pro, but nothing that anybody would even notice. I only noticed it because I had them hooked up to that Nagra rig. The bass was a little more prevalent with the Wimamp Pro, and everything was sounding fleshed out, beautiful. The sound stage was about as wide as the speakers. There was a little bit of height, but not much. There wasn't much depth, really. But I was hearing instruments in their space and the vocals dead center. There's a track I like to listen to from Depeche Mode. It's on their Live in Berlin album. And I love Martin Gore's voice. And on this album, he sings live Shake the Disease, one of my favorite songs from Depeche Mode. And this is kind of a different version. And when his voice comes out, when he's singing, it comes out into the room with these Borea BR4s, and you hear the audience in the back, and it just sounded holistic and real and alive. And that's one thing I love about these speakers. They have a live feel. When I hear this song on some speakers, and recently I heard it on a speaker that cost 20 times what the Boreas do, and it sounded a little dull. And I was like, oh, well, this doesn't sound live, right? I love a speaker that brings a live concert to the room, and these are doing that at that $550 price point. It's incredible. Now, these speakers also have dual binding posts, by the way. You can use a bi-wire cable. You can also bi-amp them if you so desire. I think that's pretty cool as well. Again, the bass port is on the front. If you have to put these up against the wall, you're not going to get any bass boom because there's no port in the back. So they're easy to place and easy to set up. But it's that live feel that I get from these that I love so much. It's kind of exciting. It's thrilling. Another thing these do very well are the dynamics. These can go from soft, a whisper, to a roar without a problem. And they're very dynamic. With some tracks, I was listening to Etta James, right? An old album from Etta James, 40s or 50s stuff. And her vocals were so deep and big in the room, and some of these instruments would just pop, and it would startle me. And I was like, holy cow, look at what's happening with these speakers. And they're such low cost, but such high performance. Now, the Wimamp Pro was also doing amazing with these. A $379 box that has everything in it. It's got decent build quality. It's not off the charts build quality. It's nothing exotic. It has decent parts quality. It's nothing exotic. And you can kind of tell if you've heard high-end stuff and you go to the Whim, you can tell the difference, yeah. But if you've never heard that exotic stuff and you don't know what you're missing, this system will be amazing. Amazing to hear. And even for me, a guy who has heard these things, it's still amazing, because one thing that gets me excited in audio is a product that punches way above its price point. And I don't know how much above the price point they punch. I just know that they sound beautiful. Now, I was listening to song Songbird from Ava Cassidy. I love Ava Cassidy's voice. And as I listened to Songbird, she had an orchestra behind her. I got a little emotional. I was starting to think about Ava Cassidy, how she passed away so young, and it was so unfair. She had such talent. And I was starting to get that emotional connection to the music. Again, with $1,000 system, and I'm a guy who's used to high-end stuff, but none of that matters. It's all about the music, right? Again, I'm not a hi-fi snob. I don't say, ooh, I have Nagra, so I'm better than you. No, I say I have Nagra because I'm a fool and I spent all this money on it because I love it. And yeah, it brings me more, but is it worth all that money for a guy like me who's not wealthy and not rich? Heck no. But I still love it. I still love my Nagra gear. It sounds heavenly. But this system, this $1,000 system, it was blowing my mind, and again, making me scratch my head as I've done before, saying, you know, if you have a small room, my room's 13 by 18, and these speakers are not meant for big rooms, because if you put them in a big room, you're going to hear less of that bass impact, right? So these are meant for small to mid-size rooms. And if you put them in a room that's of that size and you have nice natural damping in your room, like a couch, a pillows, a rug, wall hangings, stuff of that nature, you can get a nice, really beautiful sound from these. Again, the treble is extended and it's exciting, makes these speakers come alive, but it doesn't hurt my brain. I was listening 2-3 hours a night with zero fatigue. I want to get to the mid-range, but I'm going to get there last. The bass on these is improved, Triangle says, from the BR3s of the past. And the bass here is really, really good, but I think it goes down to around 44 Hertz in the specs is what I read. And that sounds about right. I'm not getting any thunderous low end here. These are not going to shake your walls or rattle your windows unless you add a subwoofer. But I listened only without a subwoofer, and I was not really feeling the need for more bass, because the bass here is really tight, controlled, and tuneful, meaning you hear everything in the bass area. You hear the plucks. Everything is clean, so there's no bloat here. There's no bloat that travels up to the mid-range and makes the mid-range a little dark. And the mid-range here is what's really special. The mid-range of these Borea BR4s doesn't sound like it should be coming from a speaker of this cost and pedigree. Triangle says they tune these to have this special kind of mid-range for the human voice. And they sure as heck did, because listening to that Eva Cassidy, listening to Depeche Mode, listening to Etta James, listening to Garfunkel and his son, Art Garfunkel, on their latest album, holy cow, the vocals were so in the room and so present and so palpable. Again, I couldn't believe it was coming from a $550 speaker. So I was enjoying this system. I went from this mega exotic system to a total cost $1,000 system for the last couple of weeks listening to these. And I was not sitting here saying, man, I can't wait to put my big system in. I was just enjoying the music. And that's proof yet again that we don't have to spend a ton of money to enjoy beautiful hi-fi music. If you want a digital streaming system, all you need are these speakers, the Winamp Pro, the speaker cables, and a subscription to a streaming service. I've talked about Spotify, Tidal, Qobuz in the past, and I've talked about the reasons why I love Spotify. I also use Tidal. They both sounded beautiful through this. As a matter of fact, playing the song You Belong to Me off the Art Garfunkel and his son's latest album, I forgot what the album's called, It was just a symphonic treat. You have the main vocal from the front of Art Garfunkel in his old age, where you hear his weathered voice now, and it's so in the room. His son comes in with a similar voice, but he sounds like the young Art Garfunkel, but a little different. And you have the music swelling in the back, coming from both sides, filling the room. Now, there wasn't much bass heft or impact there, but there was just enough there to really make it bring that emotional connection. I wasn't wanting for more bass, but if someone does want more bass, say you have the Winamp Pro, plug in a sub to the sub out, and bam, you'll have some more low end fleshed out. And I think these would sound really, really good with a decent sub in the system if you like that kind of thing. But one thing I noticed as I spent more time with these is I put these in the budget high performance category because these are leaning to an audiophile type of sound. You have the extended treble, the beautiful mid-range, the tight controlled tuneful bass, and the cleanliness, the wide openness of this system sounds really, really good. I just can't believe this is a system that's $1,000. So it's pretty amazing. Now, compared to those ELAC B3s that I reviewed last year, the ELACs are also wonderful speakers. They're $100 less. They're in a smaller cabinet. They're all black. They look plainer. But compared to the ELACs are a funner speaker. They're not like an audiophile leaning speaker. They're more about rhythm, drive, bass, right? The triangles have a little more detail going on. They have a little more wide openness going on. They're a little more crystalline, but they don't sound lean. They don't sound hard or harsh. They have a balance from top to bottom that is quite superb. Now, Triangle also has some kind of bracing in there. I'll throw an image up on the screen that is said to reduce cabinet vibrations. And usually you don't see this kind of stuff in a $500 speaker. So I think Triangle really hit it out of the park here. And this is a great speaker for someone who is starting out into hi-fi, or someone who wants an upgrade from a $200-300 speaker that may sound tinny or like a box, right? And you want something a little more higher end sounding. This is a perfect upgrade for that. For those of you getting into hi-fi, you want to buy a system, but you don't know what the heck to buy because there's so many things available and so many fancy boxes, and you see the thousands of dollars price tag. The Borea 4s, for me, I don't know of any speaker, I'll just say this, in this price range or even a little above it that can match these in looks, design, or sound. Now, of course, remember, your room is going to make a difference in the sound. The number one thing that affects the sound of your system is the room where they're placed. I happen to have a really nice sized room for speakers like these, and it's a dedicated room, so I can set everything up. I dampen my room naturally with furniture, wall hangings, rugs, pillows, that sort of thing. And that kind of helps bring more flesh to the sound. If you put these in a big empty room with the Winamp, they're going to sound maybe echoey and not too appealing. So you have to get your room right. If you're putting these in a bedroom, you should be good to go already. If you're putting these in an already set up living space, you should be good to go already. But pay attention to the dampening if you're getting any kind of off-putting sounds. In here, they sound remarkable. And yeah, I don't know what else I can tell you about them. 90 dB efficient, super easy to drive, 8 ohms, not a problem. Ports in the front, you don't have any issues with placement. 4 binding posts on the back where you can buy wire or buy amp. And they look fabulous. So these are brand new from Triangle for 2025. And I think I'm the first person to review them. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, there you go. You don't have to run them with the Winamp. I ran them with the Nagra gear and they sounded phenomenal. You can run them with anything you have and they should sound really, really nice in your space. So that's my thoughts on the Triangle Borea BR4s. There's more details and info in the written review. Again, all the links are in the description below. And if you like this video, thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Again, in March, I have 3 or 4 more speakers to review, higher end this time in March, as well as I have amps on the way, 2 or 3 amps and other things on the way. So all these reviews are coming. And I thank you all for being here and watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. So I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you all. Have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.